Hello, and welcome to another episode of No Notes, where the conversation is always a perfect 10 out of 10. This podcast is powered by Eleos, the most used and most loved AI platform in behavioral health, equipping more than 130 organizations and tens of thousands of providers with powerful automation tools that streamline documentation, simplify compliance, and surface deep care insights that drive better client outcomes. I'm your host, Dr. Denny Morrison, and for today's episode, we're excited to be joined by Sam Jefroykin, the Director of Data and AI Research at Eleos, and Natalie Szapiro, Clinical Team Lead at Eleos. We'll chat about how Eleos leverages cutting edge AI concepts alongside careful review and validation for practicing providers to build tools that truly align with the realities of behavioral healthcare. So, with that, thanks, Sam and Natalia, for joining us today.
Thank you for having us, Denny. So I lead a team of clinicians that work here at Eleos. I'm the clinical experts team lead, as you said, a team that works side by side with a data science team to make sure that our products are in good quality and are up to the standards of what the clinicians that we work with and work for and have needs for.
So I'm leading all the data and AI research in the company, including Natalia's team. So we have three main teams: the clinical expert team, and Natalia will deep dive later. We have the data science team and the data analyst team. And the goal is to make sure that we provide the best AI features to the end users.
So interesting. I mean, the two of you kind of balance each other out in a way. You've got on one side, you got the technology side that Sam leads, and then on Natalia's side, you've got the clinical kind of relevance side. Is that a fair way to say that?
Yes, I think it's fair to say that we balance each other, but more of that we kind of bounce off each other and improve each other.
So Natalia, on your team, how many clinicians do you have, and what are their backgrounds?
So we have four clinicians in our team as of today. As of today, actually five. Yeah, I almost forgot that I have another one. Four of them are from a clinical background. Some of them work in child psychology, adult psychology, and also I have social worker in the team. And they're all people that, in parallel to their work in Ilios, still hold their own clinics. So it's like they're not full time here at Ilios, so that they can keep on treating people.
Great. And Sam, how big is your team, and kind of how is it diversified?
Aside of Natalia's team, we have like data science researchers. It's about 7 people, mainly senior people that are working in the AI since 10 years, something like that. And the second is like data analyst team. We have 3 people. It's like it's like really diverse background, but like coming from tech, from like BI or data analysis.
So, you know, we're seeing AI everywhere, of course, but what makes behavioral health artificial intelligence different than, say, other aspects of healthcare or even just other aspects of AI usage, finance, or any other things? What makes this sector of business different?
That's a complex question. I think that one of the main differences is that the main thing that we're analyzing is conversation, is the relationships between people. The tool for helping people in behavioral health and in mental health is the connection, the human relationship. And so being able to provide a good analysis of it cannot be done only by the data that AI nowadays has on like relationships over the internet and things like that, that most of the data that AI is based on. We need to have criteria to make sure that we're doing it adapts to what therapy is and how therapy looks.
And Sam, from your perspective, what how is it different?
So first, I think the difference is the data. As Natalia said, the data is like conversational data. So the data is the session. This is really special. A lot of the time that when you do AI, the data is not like uh, the actual content of the work that people are doing, but coming from something aside or consequences or something. It's long audio files that you need to understand. And this is like really specific. And it's not just a normal conversation, but it's a therapy conversation, like mental health. And this is where you need the domain expertise, and this is where the Natalia's team is jumping in, and that's what makes the difference. Like you need to have both knowledge in order to provide the best output. You need the clinical things, so the domain expertise, and you need the the AI expertise to make sure to translate, I would say, all the domain expertise into like more technical aspects and like AI aspects. And this makes it special. It makes it interesting and makes it also harder, I would say.
Maybe I could add another thing, and it's that there's also a lot of ambiguity in our field. The clinical field and the mental health field are fields where the things are not very straightforward. It's not yes or no. It's not this is true or this is false. There's a lot of places where if you would give a question to like the clinical experts, we wouldn't get the same answers all the time.
Yeah, without getting too technical, and I'm going to get out of my depth very quickly here, but isn't it true, Sam, that that kind of what has allowed this to occur in the behavioral health industry, given the fact that we are analyzing language and language transactions between people, is natural language processing? Is that kind of like at the core of what has allowed us to do this?
Yeah. So the base is natural language processing. That means that apply AI into um, textual, I would say textual language data. This is the field. What it makes special is the data itself. Because you can do NLP in like finance, you can do NLP in classic medical stuff.
Particularly what differentiates Eleos is that our large language models are based only on therapy transactions, right? I mean, large language models are at the core of these things, and our large language models are different in some ways, right?
So our work is divided into all the process that the data scientists do. We start by helping them understand what is it that they're going to develop. So when they get a project, we usually are the ones helping them define what is the this thing that they're going to work on. What does it mean? Doing kind of translations between the clinical world and the technological world. After we did that part, usually we prepare data sets that they can work on, helping tag data to make sure that they can use it to train models or to fine tune the things that they're working on. The next step is in being involved in the process itself, be it by helping them adjust their prompts or write in our definitions into the product. And last but not least, the most important part is doing the validations. That's putting our stamp of approval that what we did does in essence do what we meant it to do, usually by comparing a couple of solutions that we have and pointing to the one that did the best job.
So you rather than like Sam does his part and then you do your part, it's an interactive process throughout the whole construction of whatever you're working on, correct?
Yeah. So
Yes.
can go through like one project. Usually we start a new feature in a project. We assign a data scientists and clinical experts. So there are two in the project. Then kind of create, okay, this is the scope of what we want to do clinically. For example, the concept of golden thread. They will explain what is the concept of golden thread, how we are seeing it, how it's written, like all the details of what is a golden thread. Now, during the research, there's always clinical experts attached to the project to ping pong with the data scientist in order to make sure that they understood, if they have question, if they kind of try to find a solution, they want an opinion of like output, stuff like that. There is no one single project that AI researcher is doing that clinical expert didn't work on.
Yeah, and I think like one of the most important things is like the process involves a lot of like I said with the translations, for example. If I'm gonna delve into the example that Sam gave here about the golden thread, for example, it is a term that our teams, like the data science team, didn't know much about, and so we came up and said we need to develop something for golden thread. We need to make sure that our notes are golden threaded, and they looked at us with puppy eyes and said, what is that? And so the first usually intuitive step for us would be to say, okay, golden thread is making sure that there is one thread aligning throughout the whole therapy. And that's like a definition that we would understand, making sure that the treatment plan is aligned with the notes that come up in the sessions and making sure that the therapist is doing their job. And usually after I say something like this, I might get another data scientist looking at me and saying, what? And so that's when I need to kind of say, okay, this is exactly what it means. It means that I expect that this part of the treatment plan will appear in this part of the note, and I want to see that there is some correlation there. And there we go into a process of like really defining it to the terms of like really like making sure that if I said this definition to directly to the AI, they would understand me. So I'm making sure that I'm saying not that I need the exact same text to be in the treatment plan in the note, or that I need some amount of correlation. And which amount of correlation? Is it enough that just the word is mentioned, or is there need for going really into like the topic? For example, I have a treatment plan with something saying, I don't know, working on anxiety. Is it enough that just the word anxiety is mentioned? Is it enough if the word anxiety is not mentioned, but we talk about the topic around it? So those kind of definitions are what we need to do in order to make sure that when our data scientists are developing their solutions, they're doing it accordingly to what we mean. And usually it's that work of like balancing our knowledge in the clinical world with their knowledge in the technological world, and making sure that we understand and bridge both worlds.
It is really a fascinating process, and the fact that we have such deep embedding of clinicians into the very creation of these new products and services, to me, is really exciting. You It sounds like you have to kind of work together to get to a point where you've got a product that is good enough, however you define that. How do you define that? How do you get to the point where you say, "Okay, this is not perfect, but it's good enough that we can start on this, and then it will continue to iterate." How do you do that?
I believe there's a bunch of like different things coming into that definition. From my side, I can say that one of them is like making sure that we're not making any big mistakes, any like red flags like that Sam mentioned before. Making sure that the things that we're providing are in a level where like it wouldn't cause more damage than good, let's say. And also, of course, we also have like product definitions, things that like our product managers decide that we need to or don't need to have in terms of how accurate we want our outputs to be. And it's always like a balance because just like I said, like we work in teams, like each clinician doesn't work alone. We usually work in at least pairs to make sure that we're validating off each other, because there's discrepancies between us, like as clinicians as well, in what we agree that is correct or not. So we don't expect the machine to be more accurate than a group of clinicians. So if we have disagreements between us, we would expect that the machine also wouldn't be 100%.
Yeah, to me, that's pretty interesting, and that's to go live. That's so you can get a product, you get it to a point where you can release it, but it doesn't stop there. There's kind of a feedback loop that occurs after that. Talk to us about that a little bit.
So, okay, let's say it's the first time we deploy this feature. Now we got from product that it's like a test. We have few users, so it doesn't need to work like for 10,000 people in the same time, etc., etc. So we put in place a lot of monitoring on the tech side, and a lot and we make sure that we will go over everything that is happening in the clinical side. That means what are the suggestions we are offering, how the user interacts with the suggestion that we are giving. So let's say we gave 10 summaries. Let's see how many they picked. Let's see how much they change inside. Let's see what in the final note was written. What did we miss? And then usually when it's a new feature, what we do, we monitor almost on a daily basis the data, so the monitoring, the metrics. And after that, after a time that we have enough enough data, we'll ask Natalia still to go over the notes that were created, what the AI output, and kind of doing a error analysis or analysis of what's good and what we're missing and what we can improve. And then there's an iteration there.
Usually call it a qualitative analysis. Like they do the data and the numbers, and then we jump in and do like the more qualitative, in depth, like looking at what are the gaps between what we provide and what our clients are using.
And for some of our listeners, who particularly anybody who's done any construction of psychological tests, this process is probably going to sound very familiar, because when you build a psychological test, you you get items and you analyze the data, and you get to a point where you say this test is good enough that it will give us good information if we administer it. And but no test has a 1.0 reliability or validity. They all are, none of them are perfect, but uh, you also see psychological tests that get revised periodically because they get better data, get new questions, they analyze them completely over again. So you got, MMPI has been revised again. There's, SCL 92 is out. So there's, this is really a similar process to what mental health psychometricians do when they have to build a psychological test. The process sounds very similar to me. Does that, do you think that's right, Sam?
Yeah, it's really similar. And on top of that, I would say that in parallel, you have the AI research outside of Eleos that is also evolving really fast that we need to integrate. Okay, so we don't just evaluate what's happening with the origin. We see, okay, all those new tech that are coming, how it can impact what we are doing now. What are our limitations today that this can open? Okay, and this is really interesting. So you have two tracks. You have tracks of like how we can understand better with the data we have today, and how we can make stuff better with the new AI advances that happen in the market. So we need to be aware of everything, I would say, around those
Yeah, that,
two.
that is that is a variable that's different than, say, a psychological test because the statistics behind a psychological test are pretty much. I mean, there's some new ones that come out every once in a while, but they're pretty much haven't changed much. AI is just on a rocket sled of change, isn't it? I mean, there's just so many new kind of features and facets of AI coming out that you guys are using as the fundamentals of what you do, right?
Yeah, and not only on the fundamentals in term models, but you have a lot of techniques that are evolving. How you use, for example, the feedback that we get, how we use the data that it's coming in. How do we validate better the models also? How do we uh, do a lot of stuff? Okay, like how we make sure that it can scale better, etc., etc. So we need to understand all the techniques behind the scenes. So let's say if there's a new big model from OpenAI that went out. It's nice for us that there's a new big models, but how did they and how did they improve it? What's the technique behind the scene? What did they use? Because this will help us for sure, or maybe not. But like we can try to understand and like kind of take the concept and adapt it to us. We'll not do exactly the same, etc. But we need to adapt. And what I say to the data scientist working, it's like what you are building today, what you put in production today, you need to be uh, to understand that probably in 3 months we'll erase it and replace it with something new. Okay, don't get attached to what you're building because it goes too fast. You need to be ready to deploy something, put a new feature with a new concept, and 10 days after something happens, and okay, we'll erase it. We don't care because it will give better output.
I would bet our listeners have probably tried the commercial chat GPTs and those tools just, on their own. And I'm sure they have seen how quickly these things have evolved and gotten better. And, so it's the same kind of process. But with that, on that topic, I'd like you both to kind of give me your take on why should clinicians not use chat GPT to write progress notes?
I don't say record your session, send it to ChatGPT. First, it will not work, and then, and also it's PHI data. If you are not a pro account and you didn't sign an NDA, and make sure you are not out of their training system, you can't use it. Okay, but if you have sentences that you want to make, or if you took notes on the side and you have a lot of typos, or you have a picture of like all the report that you want to put it in your EHR system as text, you have a lot of day-to-day operational tasks that don't have PHI data that you can use AI for. A clinician is not only doing therapy. You have a lot of, we know it, there's a lot of bureaucracy, there's a lot of stuff. Use it for that. Why not?
I would maybe add to that that like yeah, I'm definitely also all into encouraging people to try AI and also to get to trial mirror with like how different ways that they approach AI can help them get the results that they want. Because usually it's like the most intuitive first try is not the best. But also, like Sam said, like in terms of creating like the data for a progress note, I wouldn't go for it because we had been for like a whole iterative process to make sure that our products give something that is really written in good clinical language, includes integrations, include everything that is needed, and knows how to identify intervention, things that we want the model to have in order to create a progress note that otherwise will be lacking. Because an AI can create a really good and nice summary of a conversation. If you want to make it more adept to clinical work, you need to analyze what's happening behind the scenes and what was the whole conversation there and what's happening. And those things are usually not done that way. And also, normally I wouldn't do it.
One of the things that you both have to be very sensitive to is privacy, PHI, and security. And can you speak to a little bit about how you do that? What goes through your processes that that helps make these transactions secure and that clinicians can trust that the data is not going to be, end up in the wrong hands. Talk to us about security and privacy.
So we are not the security experts, but in the data side, first, for example, when I say that we are fine tuning models or using your data to improve the models, like it stays into your organization. For example, I have organization A. I will use only the data of this organization to help the organization A. I will not use clinician data from A to organization to help organization B. Okay, the data is like kind of encapsulated to your tools. Then when we are using this data, we de-identify it. That means we erase any PHI and PII information whenever we are fine-tuning and training models. And even if when we are using big foundational models or the models we are training, open source model, etc., we make sure that it's we are using through a third party that is like uh, HIPAA compliance, that we have NDA, that we make sure we are out of any data, how to say, forgot the word, that they kept, that make sure that they don't keep their data, our data on their side, even for a short period, even for 1 minute, we don't want. Um, we make sure that the connection when we send a request is secured, etc., etc. There's a lot of stuff in place to make sure we are really secured in terms of data manipulation, etc. On top of that, the data we are keeping, like the output of the AI or stuff like that, not everyone can see it. Natalia's and my teams are the only one in the company that can really or will really look at it. On top of that, you have a lot of rules also. Natalia can't read this with someone else in the room that can read it also. Make sure not to show it to someone that shouldn't see it. I can't use a non-secure Wi-Fi system to access some data, etc., etc. We have a lot of like stuff in place.
In addition to that, you would say, okay, there are some certain cases where we need people to be exposed to, let's say, a session and a progress note. We need them. We need developers to be able to test their product, and for all those purposes, we have mock data. My team, part of our role is to create data that is not real. For example, even today in the afternoon, I sat down with one of my clinicians to record a mock session. We sat down, we put our imaginary hats as like patient and clinician, and we just sat and recorded a session of therapy to be used for testing, to be used for making sure that our products are working fine. And nowadays, we're also doing like a big scale project of that, of making sure that we have enough mock data to keep everyone else's data as safe as possible and use it the least amount possible. Like we would want to use the data that we have less than the mock data, because mock data is easier for us to access, to try out, to test, and it's also easier for us to do like a long-term um, quality benchmark on, because the rest of the data we're not keeping as long.
I think the audience will understand how important it is to have practicing clinicians who are doing these kind of things, both the mock interviews, but also analyzing and doing the exchange with Sam's team. So, can you think of like an example of where the clinical expertise that on your team, Natalia, shaped the direction of a product or a feature?
Yeah, for sure. I think that there are many cases where we come to the conclusion that some things could be like ambiguous and couldn't be like defined by like even within the team. I think we had some cases where, like, for certain interventions, for example, we couldn't agree exactly when those interventions are happening or not happening. Like, what's the threshold to count something as, I don't know, a mindfulness practice? Is it enough that I'm just asking someone to take a few breaths, or are we talking about like a whole practice? There are kind of scenarios more ambiguous. For example, like, when are we saying that one topic is discussed or not? Those kind of things are very like are a big involvement over team. Another thing is like how much we direct the key moments. What is the important things to include or not include in a progress note? And we had a whole process of like defining within the team what are the things that are more important and less important to include.
One of the things that I like about that is if there's not consensus because there is no consensus in, say, the industry about whatever that topic was, when we provide that feedback to a clinician, that perspective may be different than what that clinician's perspective is. And in that case, it gives them a view that they may not have even thought of. I oftentimes speak to people about what Eleos does particularly in a therapy session as kind of like having a co-therapist in the room. And so the fact that you will get a different opinion from the Eleos app is like it's kind of what you want to do to stimulate a clinician to think about things in ways that they may not have thought of. And I mean, in that way, we add unique value. And I think that's a direct result of what you guys go through when you are have differing opinions about things. Does that sound right to you?
I think it does, but I think that also it's a bit like I'm still a little bit uncomfortable in my chair about thinking about putting it as a different clinician being in the room, just because I feel like this is not the purpose of what we do. Like, I'm not trying to like guide clinicians to think differently about their sessions. I'm trying to give them the tools to summarize what they're doing. And I know that very like we're trying to sometimes create something that is globally good for all the clinicians in an organization, or generally to all clinicians. And there we have like variations. But like saying that they have another clinician with them in the room is like, yeah, we are. It can be helpful like as another way of thinking.
Not against, but I will take the other direction than Natalia. I think there's another clinician in the room while you are writing the notes. So not in the session because there's no one in the session, but when you write the notes, maybe the AI thought that this subject was the interesting thing in the session, and you think that it's interesting, but maybe something else is interesting, or maybe you forgot about that, or maybe you forgot that you had this plan that you gave this homework, or so you have like kind of a assistant that can help you. It's not another opinion. It's not like how you should conduct the therapy or not. It's not this. It's like someone to remind you, hey, you talked about that also. Oh, and you might have done that also. Have you thought about this? It's like a support in the writing.
So this has been a fascinating conversation with the two of you, and frankly, I've learned a lot. So as we're wrapping up here, tell me what you think is one of the most critical things that you would want behavioral health leaders and clinicians to know about AI in general and Eleos particularly. What would you want them to know about AI?
I think that if they're staying with one thing from this whole conversation, it would be the part about not being scared to try AI, whilst also knowing that the whole process that we do here at Ilios is tailored to make their work a lot more easier and to make the AI very adjusted to what they need. We are here, we are involved, we are hands on. We have a team of clinicians that are actually practicing clinicians involved hands-on inside the product, and that makes our offering to them much more tailored than what a general AI can provide. But it's not to say do not try other AIs. Actually, use them, see what they can provide, and then look at us, and you could see that we provide even better things.
What I like to say about Elos, it's an AI from the therapist for the therapist.
This has been actually really fascinating, and I wanted to thank both of you. And I think one of my takeaways from this has been that your job is to reverse engineer the brain of a therapist. I like that. I love that comment. Um, I want to thank Natalia and Sam for their time today. And I also want to thank Brooke Andrus, our producer, for helping us get this thing on the air today. For that, thank you very much, and we will call it a day.